Friends,
Shalom friends.
Teresa.
Today we are going to talk about another birth story, birth story number 8. And this one,
Hey, sorry.
we felt it's suiting that we talk about it together. So number 8 is Rennie.
Rennie Jacob.
Yes.
And I would say right off the bat, just about Rennie is in every way, as we'll get into, Rennie broke all of our patterns. We had boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy with Samuel David, who we talked about last time. And I think we were expecting that our pattern would continue at that point.
Yeah,
because it just seems so obvious.
Who knew it would go so far, and it did. So
Yep.
we thought, well, it's going to continue.
7 straight alternating, and then comes Rennie. And right off the bat, just talking about him being a pattern breaker, I would say that we have 6 boys, and our boys, all except for Rennie, have blue eyes. And Rennie has brown eyes. And none of the girls have blue eyes, so it was always just the boys with the blue eyes. Teresa doesn't have blue eyes, I don't have blue eyes, just our sons, and Rennie was different. So a pattern breaker, and then also his name, at least up to this point, is the only one that's not a strictly biblical name, his first name for the boys, because we have Josiah, who was one of the good kings of Judah, who took over the kingdom when he was 8 years old, and we have Benjamin, and then of course we have Andrew, and Benjamin was one of the sons of Jacob, and then Andrew, one of the disciples, and then after Andrew we have Samuel. Samuel was one of the most amazing people in the Bible, in my opinion, a prophet and judge. And then after that we have Moshe, and Moshe is the Hebraic rendering of Moses. So anyway, Rennie, you want to talk about your pregnancy and stuff?
So my pregnancy was smooth, nothing unusual, except when I went probably for my 7-month appointment. Then I was informed that he was not positioned properly to deliver him vaginally. So, but
And that wasn't the first time that had happened.
Yeah, that's happened at least with number 1 for sure, and probably some others. And
maybe I don't know, I can't remember.
At 7 months, there's still 2 more months for the baby to turn around, and so it's not a big concern.
Turn around or turn over, because we've had upside down and backwards.
I don't remember.
Yeah, we've had different varieties of wrong
So
way.
I was just informed, and that was essentially it. It wasn't any kind of a concern, just not an ideal situation.
But what did that do for you, right?
Yeah, and so just knowing that he wasn't in the correct position, it opened up my mind to consider, well, what if I have to have a C-section?
And had you ever really considered that prior to this, or no? I mean, when you had others that were, maybe they turned earlier. 7 months is kind of late, maybe, is my thought, within the pregnancy.
I don't remember.
Because I don't remember anybody before him being the wrong way so late in the pregnancy.
I would say at the very least that this is the first time that I know for certain that I felt peacefulness about if that had to be, then I'm just going to trust God that He's going to take care of the baby and me.
And were you watching a video?
So then I happened to, at the same time when he was still in the wrong position, I was watching A Business of Being Born by Ricky Lake, The Business of Being Born. And the end of the video, it really struck me, because this woman who went to do her home delivery, she had a midwife with her, and then the midwife told her that labor is too long and we need to take you to the hospital, and she had to get a C-section. and Ricky Lake asked her how she felt about not being able to go through with delivering at home and having to go to the hospital to get the C-section, how she felt about it. And she just said that she believes that was the best thing for her baby, and so she doesn't have any regrets. And that really stuck with me. So I went for another appointment, probably my 7.5-month appointment, and I was told that the little one turned around. So I thought, I'm out of the woods and I don't need to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, and we don't want to have, we never wanted to have any cesareans.
No,
I always
no.
wanted Teresa to be able to deliver naturally. I mean, and we've talked a little bit about, I mean, it's so crucial for the beginning, the jump start of their immune system, the health for the baby to be delivered vaginally. And of course, Teresa, I think up to this point had read quite a bit about the difference in the recovery between a cesarean and a natural delivery. I would think it was something that wasn't like,
Yeah.
you believed that it was an easier recovery to have a
Yes.
natural delivery,
Of
and so
course.
we wanted what
And
was
I've
best for
always
baby.
experienced a quick
We
delivery.
had a quick delivery and a quick recovery. And
Quick
so we wanted for her best and for baby's best not to have a cesarean. So it was. I remember feeling, as you talk about it, that it was quite a relief to know that
Yeah, of course.
the baby had turned around. Now you say baby, we didn't know what kind of baby. We weren't finding out. So this was still, he was going to be a surprise to us.
Yeah.
We were maybe thinking he might be a girl, like we said, to follow the pattern. We didn't know that he was a boy.
Yeah.
They weren't telling us. We weren't looking at sonograms.
Right. And
Were you trying to have less sonograms at that point, or how was
Yeah,
that?
I did. I had less sonograms. I didn't get any ultrasounds with him.
So how did they know? Just feeling your
Yeah.
belly?
The midwives especially, I think, in my opinion, they really have a handle on
Yeah.
just like pushing on your belly and knowing
There's his
where,
little toe.
Yeah. They'll be like, oh, can you feel this body part? And I don't even know what body part is what when I'm touching my belly.
Yeah. Okay,
But
so
they
no
know that.
ultrasounds.
No
Okay.
ultrasounds, but everything was going well. My 8-month appointment, I was going to leave the house in the morning to see my midwife, and the kids, when we leave the house, they all run up to us and they want to greet us with a hug, goodbye. And I told them I'll be back in a little while.
You never do know.
And I had no idea that I was not going to be back in a little while, but I remember that since I told them that. And I went to my appointment, and they always check the baby's heart rate, and this time the baby's heart rate was high. So the midwife told me, well, the baby's heart rate is high, and then she had me lay on my side, and she just continued with my appointment. And then she went to check the heart rate again to see if the heart rate had lowered, and it did not. And so then she said, okay, well, we're just going to take you to another floor now so that they can monitor you and the baby. And that to me was the indicator that
Something's wrong.
yes, that things are not going
Do you remember what his heart rate was in utero at that point, at your appointment?
Well, it was I think it's normally supposed to be like 130-ish.
Yeah, 150 is the highest they want to see.
Yeah,
at
and
that
it
point.
was 300. It was in
Okay,
the
yeah, it
low
was in the
300s.
Yeah.
It
I
was-
remember that it got up into the 330s at one. I mean, so
Yeah.
after he was
It
out.
was
for
so
sure.
high that they couldn't even get a reading until the cardiologist came in with his ultrasound equipment.
Yeah.
That was the first time they can get a definite reading of what the heart rate was.
So what happens after that? You let me know that you were going to be there longer, and maybe there's a problem, and maybe I started making some calls about getting some people to come meet me at the hospital with the kids or something.
Well, they took me to the next, like one of the other floors, and they put the monitors on my belly so they could keep track of the heart rate. And I called Aaron and I told him what was going on, and I told him that it's possible that I might have to have a C-section today to have the baby come out.
Okay, so I don't remember that very much, but
Yeah.
I do remember that I got two friends to meet us at the hospital, and so that I could at least be in there with you while the cesarean was happening.
Yeah.
And they stayed in the waiting room, so I could go in with you.
Yeah. Well,
But prior to that, you have...
Well, the cardiologist came in, and it was his call to decide if I will get the cesarean and have the baby taken out, or if they will just give heart drugs to me, because then it will get to the baby, the drugs.
But not eventually, not immediately. That would take a while.
They say that it works sometimes it doesn't work, and so he was having a hard time deciding, and I really appreciated that. He was an elderly doctor, which I feel, for me, that just makes me feel more at ease. Like,
yeah, I mean, a different time and a lot of experience and a different way of thinking about medicine and
so that helped me to feel okay.
So when he made the call, you could be a little bit more peaceful about it too.
And he obviously was having, he didn't
want to take the baby out.
He didn't, and he even told me, I'm having a hard time deciding what to do, and he would look at the monitor, and as the time went on, he said, I really feel like the baby needs to come out today, especially because I was 8 months along. And so
right, so very viable, far enough along that there's not any big issues there at all, other than maybe the possibility that lungs aren't completely developed, which is the only issue at that point, and that the heart rate was so high, and that there could be also just a time waiting to see if the drugs work, trying to get them through your system, and then he wasn't in immediate danger, like he wasn't going to die that day or something, frankly, but if for potentially weeks, now I don't remember this all clearly enough to say with certainty, but it was, if we waited around until he came 3 or 4 weeks and the drugs weren't taking effect going through Teresa's system, that it's possible that he could suffer cardiac arrest for the stress on his heart to be beating twice as fast as it should. So that was the big concern. Is not the immediate danger, but, well, how long do we, if we start waiting, then how long do we play the waiting game? If we're deciding that the risk is too great, get him out now, whatever. So that was the call. And they, totally different experience. They scrubbed you up for surgery. You'd not had a surgery before of any kind, right?
No, only my wisdom teeth.
Wisdom teeth, that one, I think, no. Oral surgery, not the same thing as getting scrubbed up with,
No, that was my first surgery. And I did have the epidural with my first delivery at the very end, which I spoke about with that story. But other than that, I've not had the epidurals, and I hate needles, and I don't like the idea of a needle being in my spine. So that...
And people suffer issues. I mean, there's people who I mean, we personally know people. I mean, so... There are and we witnessed it. We witnessed it with our daughter who was in the hospital, who as a not as an infant, who had spinal draws, drawing spinal fluid, and the issues that she suffered with in the aftermath of that. So you had to have.
Yeah. So they told me that I have to have the epidural, and they got me the C-section.
Well, so you had the epidural.
Yeah, they gave me the epidural, and I thought, what if it doesn't work? This is scary. Oh, man.
Yeah. So anyway, it was all lasers.
Yeah.
No suturing to put you back together again either.
Well, I had the blue curtain up, so I couldn't see what they were.
But I mean, you didn't have sutures.
No, I didn't have to go back to get anything.
So lasers to open you up and lasers to burn you back together, basically. Yeah. So I will just comment that the smell of burning flesh was interesting.
Yeah, it was unusual.
I don't know what that was like for you to know that was you that you were smelling.
I was surprised because I didn't know that they were gonna
laser
open me with a laser.
Yeah. All right, so out comes Rennie, and his heart rate was normal then. Is that what you're saying? When he first came out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somehow I missed that. There's a whole
group of people in there.
Like people from every department, it seemed like
I'm reminded as we talk about that there was a group of young people in there, 3 or 4 doctors and nurses, whatever, and they were laughing and joking like they were having a good old time.
That's a really good point to bring up.
And that's frustrating because here we are. I mean, we're having an emergency cesarean because now at this point too, it's amazing to me that people who do this are so out of tune. Like, this is all happening. Teresa just went for a regular appointment. This is all happening boom, 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 boom for us. I'm trying to find out okay, I need somebody to watch all of our kids so that I can be in there with her. She's, head spinning with all of this, trying to take in all of this information. We don't know yet how much concern there is about his heart rate. We don't even understand. Now, we're talking about it like we understand it now, but in the moment, did we fully understand that there was not an immediate danger with his heart rate being so high? I don't think we did. And so we're concerned about him. Mm-hmm. All of this stuff is happening so fast. And so here we are, and you're like people at a bar having a drink after work while you're in this operating room to do this cesarean, an emergency cesarean, because there's concern about the well-being of our son. That's ridiculous. But not too long after he was out, his heart rate shot back up into the 300s again. I remember seeing something like 333, 335, something like that, 335, I think. It was real high. And again, they want to see it half that, less than half that. It was like 180 beats per minute higher than what they'd want to see as the highest, kind of so that was a big deal. So we got to see him briefly.
Yeah, for a couple minutes they put him in the bed and wheeled him to us.
And it wasn't an incubator, it was an open bed and we could look at him.
No, it wasn't.
Touch him.
Well,
no,
yeah,
we couldn't touch him.
No, I didn't touch him. I don't think we could touch him either.
No, he was in a plastic bubble.
So we got to look at him, and then they took him to the NICU.
Off to the NICU.
They, put my organs back in my body.
Yeah. So I got to see some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the surgery went well, and I didn't have to go through it and feel the pain.
Right.
Which I have read some horror stories about.
Sure, absolutely. Things don't work perfectly all the time. I know that when I had stitches in my nose and I was supposed to be numbed up, it took them forever to numb me up. And then when they started working on me, when I had 47 stitches in a little area in my nose, and a plastic surgeon did the sewing. I was feeling it, and I had, "Do you feel that?" They were surprised, and they had to go back and poke me a million more times with the xylocaine or whatever. So, you add anything else you want to add here? I just want to try to keep it from getting too long. The only thing I would say then is I had to deal with. We had all of our kids in the waiting room with a couple of friends, and so I couldn't stay. Teresa, I kind of saw her into the recovery room. Yeah, and then I left, and then so Teresa for the first day didn't get to see him, because she's just worrying about getting herself healthy and taking care of herself, because she just, had herself lasered open. And so I feel like, neither one of us really got to see him very much for the first couple days. How long were you in the hospital?
I was in for, I think,
I'm
3 days. I'm pretty certain 3 days I was in there for.
Yeah, so I couldn't come very often, and I wasn't working because I had to take care of our kids, and just kind of leaving for really quick visits, like super fast. Like I was always on the clock, like feeling like we had old enough kids that I could leave them for like a super short amount of time, letting neighbors know to keep an eye on things or come over and sit with them or whatever. But I mean, it was really like we didn't have long-term sitters or anything. Like it was always just like somebody who could watch things for like a short while, and I had to hurry up and get back home. So like an hour tops at the hospital to say hi to Teresa in her recovery room and go see him in the NICU, and then back home again. So I just didn't get much of a chance to see him. So we got you home, and what would you say? Your recovery went well, thank goodness.
Yeah, my recovery went well. I was in awe to consider that some moms choose to have C-sections if they don't need one. And it's true that you get to skip your laboring through your contractions, but after they sew you back up, it's a lot of pain, and
they melted your back.
Yeah.
So your recovery from your vaginal births has been considerably better, you would say?
Yeah, absolutely. My recovery, I have said in my other videos that after I deliver vaginally, like I feel totally fine after that, and there's no problems, and I could go on living life like I do every day.
Yeah, you're cooking pancakes the day after you come home from the hospital.
With a C-section, I was laying in bed, and the following day, I was told I had to get out of bed and walk to the bathroom, and it felt like it was an impossible task to do, and I did it, but it was very painful. I was purposeful after that to walk the hallways and walk around my room because I was told that I would heal quicker if I
Good on you.
would be active. So that did help me out, but I felt like I would much rather go through laboring through contractions and delivering my baby naturally than everything being done with, all of my pain that I have to deal with,
Yeah.
rather than doing it this way, because it was days, and I had to just take things slowly.
Yeah, and poor Rennie, I mean, there's no, the fish jumping over there like crazy. When they come through the birthing canal, what's on them? I forget the name of the.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Well, why is my brain just not working? But anyway, they pick up all this really great, healthy, good bacteria culture, and it gets all in their orifices, in their eyes, their nose, their mouth, and their ears. And it really, absolutely is. There's like I feel like it's a really excellent way to put it. It kickstarts their immune system, and so now Rennie is going to be in the NICU, surrounded by wireless signals, which are not good for you. He's getting antibiotics. He's not getting breast milk at all, which is a huge,
Well, he got a little,
huge problem.
but not much, because
Well, I mean, little bits of bottles, but I mean, he took some of it, but it was nothing like nursing. So it's good to say that he wasn't getting none.
No,
he
I
getting
was
some.
pumping. I had to pump, and that too,
Let's see,
that
your
was
milk would
kind of
come in.
like,
It's a pain.
you know, I would much rather, of course, just have my baby and breastfeed my baby,
Yeah.
rather than having the machine and having to pump throughout
Well, besides
the
that
day.
too, I mean, even though he was getting breast milk, and I think you may have shared this in other videos, I don't know, but that a nursing mother, when they hold their baby, they're taking in through their nose, they're breathing in information about their baby, and then their body produces antibodies that the baby is going to need to fight off whatever it's dealing with in its environment, and then that is in the breast milk. And so for mom to be able to hold baby, smell baby, and then her body is going to produce very specifically what baby needs for their environment to be as healthy as possible. And we didn't get to hold Rennie for a couple of weeks. And so even though Teresa was able to pump and I could give him a bottle, it's,
Yeah, they
I mean,
wouldn't
it's
let us
nowhere
hold him
near
because
the
of all
same
the
thing
wires
as
that
actually
were
nursing.
connected.
Yeah. So we didn't get to hold him, which, you know, I mean, looking back on it, it's hard to feel that emotion again. But now this being number 7, and we love our sons and daughters, and we're just enamored with our little babies. And I've said, and she's said, Teresa said time and again, that like as soon as we have them, it's hard to imagine what was life like without them. And so even though, you know, at this point, we didn't know it was going to be 2 weeks. You know, it was every day. It was as far as we knew, an indefinite period of time until they said, you know, you can hold them again. So we didn't know when that was going to end, when you could hold them. It was hard. Like that was very hard to be able to look at him, to know that he was, you know, to not be able to hold him was very difficult. And it's easy to forget that, but at that time it was a very hard thing for us. All right, so what do we want to say from there? We'll stop it before we get to half an hour and finish talking about all of the stuff afterward. So you get home, and
that was you know, obviously the first time that we left the hospital
without our baby,
and so that was different, and that was it was just really strange.
Yeah, and we did not bring any. They did say that we could bring some siblings a little bit at a time. We didn't bring them at all. We didn't want them exposed to illness at the hospital. We didn't want them to bring anything in to not only Rennie, but we were thinking about like he wasn't in his own room. He was in a room where there were 3 other babies, and just basically surrounded by curtains. And some of them, now Rennie, he was 7 pounds 2 ounces. That I remember.
He was big.
He was big. He was like, now he's our little guy now, little guy. But he and we'll get into why that is, I think, in part. But for being in the neonatal intensive care, he was like the Incredible Hulk in there. Like there were babies in there the size of my thumb, and then there's this big guy. He was huge. And so we did not want to, as much as we knew that our kids wanted to meet their brother, and they surely did. They were chomping at the bit to see him. They were sad. They were all crying sometimes. They were sad they couldn't meet him because that had never been their experience before. They never got to even look at him, let alone touch him and visit with him. And so, we could have been taken into the temptation, I suppose, to bring them, but we knew that that was probably not best for him. Puts them at risk for illness. And then we certainly don't want to put anybody else's babies who are doing worse in terms of their health, at risk because we're bringing our kids in there. So that didn't happen. So they didn't get to see him.
No.
Now we did get to watch him on a fuzzy monitor a little bit.
And that
which
was,
I think at the time we needed that, I would go back and not do that.
Yes. Yeah. Now we're more aware of wireless signals and the effect that has on.
Yeah,
our
we would have tried to
bodies.
limit that if we
Yeah.
could, but in the NICU that was basically impossible.
That was impossible.
Yeah. So Rennie's name, I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I felt like he had a battle in front of him, clearly, and that he was up for it, that he was, through God, he had the strength for that, and that he was our little guy. And at that point, even though 7 pounds, 2 ounces being 4 weeks early, he's pretty big, he was one of our smallest, and maybe at that point was our smallest. Maybe he still is the smallest, right? No, somebody might have been a little smaller than him.
Well, our smallest was not under 7 pounds, so
No.
he was, if not our smallest, maybe our second smallest.
Yeah, so everybody was like 8 or 9 pounds, or Ben was almost 11 pounds. So, I don't know, the idea of small and strong, small and mighty, I don't really know how it all came about, but I started looking for names that would maybe kind of convey that meaning. And so what I found was Rennie, this old Gaelic name, very rarely used, not a popular name by any means. And Rennie means small but mighty. And then I suppose that God just kind of put it on my heart that, the name Jacob, and I feel like it fits very nicely, it rolls very nicely with Rennie. But it wasn't really for that reason. But Jacob wrestled with the angel to receive a blessing, and he would not let the angel go. And the angel had to touch his hip socket and dislocate his hip to let him go. Certainly he was tenacious. There was a tenacity in Jacob. And so, Rennie, small and mighty, and the tenacity of Jacob. Certainly, Rennie has those things, and he was going to need them. Not only because of this experience at the hospital and in the NICU, but what was to follow for the first year of his life. So, Teresa, I would kind of end this first part of the video by saying that it's not easy for Teresa to watch her babies suffer, and it's not easy for me either. But I have maybe it's a man thing, to some degree. I wouldn't say that that's entirely it, but I think that that's part of it. It's easier for me to compartmentalize and just sort of go and deal with the task and not be overcome emotionally, and then kind of decompress later, which I had to do from time to time. And I didn't expect it, but when I consider it all, I guess I still get emotional about it because it was hard. But I think that Teresa could have felt guilty, and I don't know if maybe you did feel guilty about not getting to see him very much, especially in the beginning. But I always had the impression that even if it was unspoken at times, it was something we did speak about from time to time, that you needed me to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't feel like you could be there all the time.
No.
And then if you couldn't be there all the time, it would have been unbearable for you to consider him being alone as much as he would have been if I didn't spend as much time there as I did. So you could have done it if you had to.
If I had to, yeah.
But it was much better in every
Yeah.
way for me to be there.
And there were things like you were there for his operations.
Yeah, he had some minor operations, and then I've always been the one who kind of absorbs more of the information the doctors are presenting, and
So that was really good. I'm glad that you were there for that.
we certainly have talked about this in different videos, that we complement each other very well, and that's a fact. And we have different strengths, and there's overlapping strengths, but there's certain things that I understand that this is Teresa's strength, and this is something for her to do, if possible, because she's going to do that better than I'm going to do it. And there's things where, well, this is a job for me to do. And it's important whenever she's needed to be at the doctor for something for me to be there with her, because I'm asking her questions afterward. Did you ask this or that? And she's like, oh, I didn't think of that. I don't remember this. And so it's good for me to be there to absorb that information. So, yeah. Certain doctor's appointments or dentist visits, Teresa would do those things. And then if it was something that was really important to kind of soak up the information, then it would be my job to do that. And there was a lot to try to understand and soak up and learn. So that was important. So we're going to stop right there and then come back for part 2 in a moment.